Hey guys, happy Celebrate Horror Weekend and happy birthday to Sadie. Pardon the background, but I'm back here hiding from my 2-year-old so I can get this reading done. So I will be reading a little bit from my first book, Whispers in the Dark. Really never get tired of seeing that cover. And this is from chapter 2. Sam was the only person I'd ever told about the things I saw back then. Images of scenes and people, sometimes innocuous, sometimes terrifying. Most were recognizable as the shades of people. A few seemed to be mere manifestations of intense emotion, pain, grief, terrible anger, or sadness. Others bore no resemblance to anything living or dead. Great lumbering horrors or sneaking, stealthy things I prayed weren't real. Sometimes they took no notice of me, caught up in replaying their own dramas, but other times they looked right at me. Those were the worst. The eyes that would catch mine, dead and still or red and angry. It is a terrible thing to catch the gaze of a ghost. Back then, before the fire, all of it, every haunting, every creeping nightmare was always prefaced by the whispers. I thought of them like that, an entity with a proper name, instead of just a collection of noise, because that's what they were, something separate from the ghosts whose arrival the whispers heralded by their rising noise and chaos. I would wake, a small child alone in the dark, to the sound of thousands of sibilant voices, knowing that if the whispers were there, a haunting was never far behind. They'd gone blessedly silent after the fire that ended my childhood, but the other spirits had stuck around. I know not everyone believes in things like that. A skeptic would say I was seeing things, letting my mind whisper suggestions until my eyes saw what wasn't there. It sounds plausible, but it's wrong. I know it is. At first, doubting my own sanity, I would research the places where these visions occurred, and all too often the people and the scenes would match up eerily with former occupants of the buildings. But it was more than historical confirmation of the things I saw. It was a certainty I carried with me from the beginning. Having had my share of nightmares, I could trust myself to tell the difference. Besides, the ability to see spirits was simply part of my identity, the bad part that made my parents ashamed. In any case, it was obvious I wasn't the only one. Judging by the current spate of supernatural reality shows, everything from psychic kids to haunted pets, there were lots of people out there who saw the kinds of things I did, and they were all looking for answers in their own way. I found some of my answers at Briar Ridge. The rehab facility may have been where my mother dropped me to keep me out of sight, but it had also been my salvation. I'd been a mess after the fire, even more so than I'd been before it. The flames had started in my room, but the investigators never found an accelerant or a cause. No candles burning, no matches, no faulty wiring. The point of origin had been directly under my bed, and no one else had been in the room when it started. It was always locked from the outside at night, and the windows were nailed shut to prevent me from sneaking out. I'd woken to smoke, thinking it was morning already, mistaking the reddish glow of flames for sunrise, momentarily pleased at the idea of a wood fire in the morning. It sounded cozy and happy. I'd started choking, coughing so hard I thought my throat would bleed. The heat from underneath the bed had grown painful, and I'd finally realized fire. I don't know how long I banged on my bedroom door, begging for Dad to let me out. Prying at the window, hoping I'd get some kind of adrenaline rush that would allow me to open it, but nothing like that happened. Instead, I grew weaker, confused in the smoke and heat. I'd slumped to the floor, and that's when my nightshirt caught fire. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember is my brother Andy scooping me up, carrying me out, walking through fire to save me. He'd come back for me, I learned later from my grieving mother. Andy had been safe out on the lawn with her. Dad had taken them both outside. My parents had forbidden him, but my brother had come back for me anyway. Dad had gone back in for Andy, cursing my name as he did, and they'd both lost their lives. I remembered Andy gasping his last beside me on the dew-soaked lawn, his lungs and trachea charred by the flames. My mother screaming beside us, asking where Dad was, why he hadn't come out with us. I'd never seen my father again. The firemen had found him trapped by part of the roof that had fallen in on him. He had burned alive. Mom never forgave me. The scars I carried would never be punishment enough as far as she was concerned. The fire had started in my room. It had to be my fault. She'd been left unscathed, but without the only 2 family members she cared for. She dropped me in rehab, and we hadn't spoken since. That scratchy phantom music started soon after and became the only family I had. My brother, I wanted to believe, still looking out for me. My time at Briar Ridge had not only brought me through the physical rehabilitation of healing from the fire, but it had been essential in getting a handle on my visions of the dead. For the first time, I was out of the damning shadow of my father. I didn't know how to stop the things I saw, but I learned not to hate myself for them. not to see their presence in my life as the stain of sin my father had always said it was. I never heard the whispers again, though whether that was because of Briar Ridge or because I'd left them behind along with all my childhood memories of the charred husk that used to be my home, I wasn't sure. By the time I met Sam, the ghosts had receded, occurring with less frequency and intensity. Telling him about them later, when I knew him enough to trust him, seemed to ease them further, and by the time I made the SWAT team, they were completely gone. I hadn't seen or heard anything otherworldly in years, unless you count that music, which I didn't. Not until I'd seen the impossible animation in Charlie Acres' ruined face, heard the cold sound of that alien voice. I had wanted to believe, with an intensity that didn't let me look straight at it, that I had finally gained control. That the reason I no longer saw ghosts was that I'd managed to become master of my own mind and willed them away from me. Now I sat in my quiet driveway, watching the darkened windows of my home and wondering exactly how wrong I'd been. So that is Whispers in the Dark. That is published by Journal Stone. It's been out for a little while. And then just to give a quick shout out, I've got my next book as a novella called Crossroads, and it is coming out from Off Limits Press on August 10th. Really be excited if you check it out. I'm really excited about this publication. Anyways, everybody celebrate horror. I can't wait to see everybody else's readings. Have a good one.